Hello, it's the Coaster Craze, and today I'll be talking about the Mar X-Car roller coaster, Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket at Universal Studios, Florida. So, I rode this coaster twice over my vacation and my Florida trip because I went to this park 2 days and I rode once each day. So, let's get started. The first category I'll be discussing is the statistics category. So, it opened in 2009. It has a height of 167 feet and a speed of 65 miles per hour. It features no inversions, but it has a non-inverting loop and a vertical chain lift. So, for statistics, I'll be giving it a solid 3.5 out of 5. There are definitely a lot larger coasters out there, but 167 feet and 65 miles per hour is definitely pretty impressive. I mean, this is easily the largest coaster at the two Universal parks. And it is a really nice height and speed. Like when you get to the top of the lift, you get a great view of the park. So, and the speed, you really feel it. So I think this is a pretty solid category for the coaster. So my next category is theming and scenery, and I'll be giving Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket a 4.5 out of 5. So the only thing that I'm really taking off is that it doesn't really have like a ton of theming during the ride. But what it does have is like this kind of cool station theme. It's not very specific, but it's just kind of like it's themed to music and stuff, and like pretty much like a Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. Like it has a really cool name to it, and scenery is really where it excels. It's like the centerpiece of the park. It goes from the very front to the very back. You can see it from everywhere. It goes like through a building or two. And it just goes through like so much different things. It's very cool how they integrate it into the park. And then the big thing that I really think gives it such a high score for this category is the onboard sound. You get to pick what music you listen to during the ride. So I think that was a really nice touch, and I think that's kind of like the trademark characteristic of this coaster. So far, Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket is looking pretty good, but that's all going to change with this restraints and smoothness category. So the restraints are pretty good. They're lap bars, which I'm really glad about because if they were over the shoulder restraints, this ride would have actually killed me. But that's where the positives end in this category. So this coaster, it sounds and looks insanely smooth. I was really hyped for this ride. I heard Coaster Studio say he was a little underwhelmed, but he didn't sound like he hated it by any means. So when I went on it, and at the bottom of the first drop, coming up into this non-inverting loop, I started to get this insane rattle feeling. I felt like it was more rattly when you're like increasing in speed at the bottom of like drops and stuff, but it was still really bad the entire ride, and it just gives a huge headache. There's no headbang because there's no over-the-shoulder restraints, but you're just shaking constantly on the track. I'm not sure if it's the track that's rough or if it's the cars, but I feel like it's probably the track. And since this was my first large-scale Mar Rides coaster, I was really just underwhelmed. I am not a big fan of Mars Sinai anymore. So this coaster, for this category, will be getting a 1 out of 5 because the first drop is pretty fun and there's good restraints. But that's about it. This coaster is terrible because of this one category. I now have layout as my next category, and I'll be giving it a 3 out of 5. So it actually has a pretty solid layout. It's really weird, and I kind of like that. It's an out and back, as you can see here, but what it does is it has awesome interactions with like other architecture and stuff like that, and it has a good variety of elements with the drop, the non-inverting loop, which this was my first time going on a non-inverting loop, and it's really rough, so it was kind of hard to say how much I liked it, but it was definitely an interesting experience. It has some good drops, and it has like some good like turns and helixes and stuff, and the main drawback I think is it loses a lot of momentum because there's like 5 brake runs. That's a little insane. It's great for capacity for a park like this, but just the brake runs really make the ride just stop and start and stop, and just the layout is not as good as it could be. And I wish they actually had like airtime hills or like some better elements than they actually have. So my final category before I reveal the overall score is intensity, and I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. This is a pretty intense coaster. The vertical lift can be pretty daunting. The drop isn't super steep, but it's large. The non-inverting loop has some intensity to it, and there's a lot of tight turns, especially this helix as pictured right here at the end of the ride. And while you get pretty low to the ground on some of these turns, and it's pretty compact, even though it's like a very spread out coaster, there's certain parts of the ride that are compact, and you'll get some pretty high G's. So it is pretty good for the intensity category. For Hollywood Rip Ride's final overall score, I'll be giving it a 4 out of 10. Definitely the biggest disappointment of my Florida trip. This coaster has a lot going for it, as you could see with my previous categories, and if I was doing it by the average of the categories, it'd get a pretty high score. But smoothness makes or breaks a ride, and it broke this ride. I really hope Universal gets rid of this coaster and builds an awesome out and back coaster in place of it. Maybe like the Hollywood Dream the Ride B&M Hyper at Universal Japan. That would be so much better. This coaster is not enjoyable to ride, and I don't plan on riding it anytime soon, or maybe even ever again. So, thank you for watching my video. I'm curious to hear your opinions in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe for more content and other coaster reviews, and I'll see you guys later from the Coaster Craze.